So welcome to our Global Higher Education webinars that are co-hosted by the Center for Higher Education Leadership and Policy Studies at the Education University of Hong Kong and the Consortium of Higher Education Researchers in Europe. So we're excited to have you join us today for an insightful session with Dr. Yusuf Ikbal Oldac, who is Assistant Professor at Lin-Nan University in Hong Kong. He's also a co-center fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies of the same institution. Yusuf obtained his Doctor of Philosophy in Education degree from the University of Oxford with a full scholarship. His research focuses on international and comparative higher education in the context of globalization. He has published many exciting studies in very influential journals in the field of higher education. So today, Yusuf will speak on higher education research in Muslim majority systems. We will listen to his presentation for 30 minutes, and then you will have a chance to ask him questions or make comments. Please feel free to engage with the chat and keep your mics on mute for a while. And Yusuf, it's really exciting to host this webinar with you. And you proposing some interesting ideas and concepts, and we know very little, in fact, about Muslim majority systems and what kind of future agendas and major trends could be observed in higher education research in those systems. So I look forward to learning from you, and the virtual floor is yours. So please. We welcome you here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this lovely introduction. It's really nice to be here. And it's an honor to contribute to this webinar series. So let me just start by sharing my screen. Let me see. Okay. So can you see my full screen presentation now? And it moves, right?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, all good. So, okay, as Anatoly introduced, we will talk about higher education research in Muslim majority systems, and I will discuss some major trends and future agenda. This will not be a presentation from one paper, but I have combined some of them and also some developing thoughts we will have here. As he introduced, I am Yusuf. I am currently an assistant professor at Lin-Nan University since August. I was a postdoc fellow before. So it's good to be able to, I don't know, secure some positions and survive in this academia. So here's the outline of my presentation today. I'll first start by background and rationale, why I am researching this topic. And then, as promised, the second section will focus on major trends. I will mostly focus on scientometric trends in today's presentation. And then section 3, major geopolitical shifts that we are observing. Some people may be aware of these, some are not. I think it's best to make people aware of what's going on around the world. And then lastly, I will discuss some future agenda, how to move forward this, and happy to, get your opinions on that as well. So if you see any, I don't know, screen-related issues or sound, just let me know. I'll just continue. So section 1, let's start with background and rationale. So I'll start general. The global research system is expanding at an unprecedented rate. Available data indicates that growth in global research output is driven by emerging systems rather than established and developed ones. The United States and European research systems have grown less than half of the world's average growth rate. This is very important. The world is witnessing an ongoing diversification of research countries. This study thus investigates the pluralization of research systems globally by focusing on Muslim majority science systems, basically, because we see the world is expanding much faster than those developed systems, and it has to be coming from other emerging systems, right? So first things first, let me define what is a national research system, let's say, or in short, research or science system. This refers to scientific ecosystem governed by centralized policy structures in a country. It mostly comprises research work conducted within universities, but also other institutions. And what about Muslim majority systems? Well, they refer to science systems of nations with more than half Muslim populations. So I know these countries have diverse populations. Some of them are more diverse, some of them are less diverse in terms of their demography. So minorities are all welcome. That's why the definition is majority. I mean, so my definition is above 50% population. That means that country is a Muslim majority system, right? That's the definition. So before I start everything else, maybe I should say why. I mean, why am I researching this? Well, here is a real life story. Just 4 days ago, I mean, one of my good friends and co-author, she wrote this on our collaborative draft paper. She says, I mean, it is surprising to see that several Muslim countries are contributing a lot on this topic, which can be a rare scenario. After I read this, I was like, why did you claim this? I mean, why is it surprising that Muslim countries are doing well and contributing to this topic? And I asked, is there a source before that said, oh, Muslim countries were falling behind on this topic? No. Is there any reason, like logical reason that you had, oh, maybe Muslim cultures are not good in this X topic? I will not tell that topic this time. It's an upcoming paper. No. But yeah, she just felt like, oh, it's surprising that Muslim countries are contributing to science in this topic. So it's all good. I explained the situation to her and we are now better. But such prejudice in the academic world is not rare, actually. It is happening a lot. And some of us are more aware of this, and some of us are less so. So Muslim majority science systems differ in many ways, including political cultures and language, but they still share some commonalities, as shared in the next slide. So the first one, maybe I would say the burden of prejudice they share globally. The associations with Muslim societies are often negative, and such sentiments do not usually differentiate between the diverse Muslim societies, therefore putting them in one basket. The fervor of this prejudice varies from society to society and even within society. Some people know more, some people know less. But the phenomenon is widely captured in the literature and experienced in daily life, like I had 4 days ago. Another commonality among these nations is a certain level of Islamic way of living that guides everyday lives, ranging from relatively secularized systems such as Turkey, that's where I'm from, and Algeria, and then to those that are governed by stricter perspectives of the Islamic rule of law, such as Iran and Saudi Arabia. Also, these are developing science systems with populations younger than the median age of the world. This is all of them. This is a shared commonality as well. So therefore, higher than world average young individuals have the potential to take up university degrees or PhD positions in short to mid-term, provided that these nations can all establish working science systems. Given that Muslim majority countries cover a significant portion of the world population and are investing in their science systems, as the following slides will indicate, they are expected to take more prominent positions in the global research space increasingly. So let's go to the next one. So what are these Muslim majority systems, right? So here are some statistical information for us. There are over 2 billion Muslims globally, which roughly means that more than 1 in 4 people are Muslims, 25.2. So this is not a small number, actually. You can't say they're minority. Muslim population mostly concentrates in the Asia-Pacific area, where 6 in 10 of all Muslims reside. This is also, most of my friends here get mind blown when I explain this statistic. I mean, how come? Aren't they all in Middle East? Well, no, most of them are in Asia-Pacific, but there are in other regions as well, as, for example, following Middle East and North Africa has 20% of the population, Sub-Saharan Africa have 16%, and it goes on. I mean, other regions less and less. Middle East has many Muslim majority systems. That's true. They're very prominent, where the religion originated, right? Along with Christianity and Judaism. So it is a dispersed, let's say, group of people we're talking about. I mean, before I start my research, I think I should acknowledge this. because it's an ongoing situation and it's a strain for us all. I mean, peace is important for universities to function and research systems to progress, right? We should all work together to build a more peaceful world. So I just wanted to share this. This is a same university. The above, Isra University, was the last university in Gaza. There are no functioning universities left in the city now. The last one was kind of destroyed in January, 1 month ago. There were, like, as far as I know, 11 universities there. It's a good number for a city. Well, no more. I mean, I know such tragedies are happening around the world as well. We know, the ones, University of Kharkiv in Ukraine, etc. It's just we should work towards peace. That's so that science, research, culture can develop. So since it's very relevant to the topic, I wanted to share it. But let's get to the data now. So I will start with this section 2, major trends. In this part, I analyze bibliometric data of hundreds of thousands of published papers to show quantitative trends, scientific influence, and research initiative related data. So we will check everything, I mean, with several data, like for triangulation purposes. I will share them differently. Every data has weaknesses and strength, so we have to discuss them all together. So here I selected 15 highest publishing research systems from the list of Organization of Islamic Cooperation member states. The organization is the second largest in the world after the United Nations. It has 57 members. So I used the volume of publications and several global university rankings to inform the selection of these research systems, basically, because focusing on all of them is hard, and some of them, as you know, don't have universities anymore. So I try to focus on the ones that are active and lively, publishing and producing knowledge, basically. So to quickly go over the data, we have here 15 countries. So they are ordered not alphabetically, but in terms of the number of publications they have in the global codified knowledge systems, such as Web of Science and Scopus. But to accompany that, I added, for example, gross expenditure on research and development here, which means, what percentage of their income they devoting to science and research. It's an indicative value. It's important for us to understand and how they may be compared to the world. As you can see, there are really lower ones, like, they have lower income as well, maybe 0.24%. And then there are higher ones, 1.28. For comparison, maybe this data may not make sense to you without a comparison. World average is 1.73%. Okay, this is in 2018. And for example, Germany, which is doing very good in this metric, 3.13% for Germany, they spent from their GDP. For US, 2.82, which are all higher than these. So to give you a perspective. And also, for example, US has a higher income as well. So they are allocating a higher percentage of a higher income. But for example, UK's number for this is 1.70%. UK actually is doing lower than world average. So maybe that's another thing to tell, UK policy, UK friends here, if there are. UK is also allocating less than world average, and so does these countries that we have in front of us today. Here we have, per capita in current PPP. I think PPP measures are more important for us as well, because these are developing countries and their purchasing power within the country is different. But here you see some are low, like $84 per capita, but some are really high, like close to $1,000 per person, right? UAE. These are smaller and well-funded systems. Yeah, and there are other metrics here as well. Let me see if I want to emphasize any of them more. We can come back later. But maybe another metric. This shows how the countries, maybe the richness, GDP per capita. Turkey, for example, around 8,000. This was 2020 data. I think it is now around 10,000. But then there are really higher ones in terms of per capita measures, like 42,000. Qatar is 50,000. So there is a variety among them. So this is very small text. Let me not bore you with this, and we can continue. Happy to come back to that. So here I provide a snapshot of publication volume. So what do we mean by volume? It's basically in the last 3 decades, how many papers are there that we can see in the international databases. It is flowed. It may not have all the publications that they have, but it's for comparison reasons. And we will try to use different metrics as well to, triangulate and see if there are big mistakes here. But basically here we see almost like let me tell you, world average is here, the orange one. So two systems here publish more than double of the world average, Turkey and Iran. Turkey does like around 480,000. The numbers isn't that much. I mean, they may have changed. It's not that important. But for me, this is like a starting point. I saw that, for example, these two countries seem to be outliers among the others, right? They are more than double the closest. And then there is like 4 other countries that, again, above 100,000 and below 200,000. Sorry for the typo here. The comma is misplaced, but it's just, I guess you can understand this is 174,000. So these are close: Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, Pakistan. And then we have other group of countries which are below 100,000. So kind of 3 groups of countries seem to emerge from the publication volumes. But of course, this is not the only data we have. Let's continue and see, what we have. So we looked at a snapshot in the previous one, but that alone does not give us everything, right? What about trend data? What's happening over time? So here, again, those top are, again, still publishing the highest. What we see, Iran is increasingly publishing, and its increase is faster than Turkey's, in at least till 2020. I mean, of course, you may come back like, oh, this number of papers, we don't know their quality, scientific influence. I will come to those metrics as well, but these are, I think, also gives us some idea about what's going on there. And again, remember that 4 countries that follow, they are still grouped together, even in just looking at the 2020 data and the others. So the reason I'm showing it is not to compare countries. I'm not a ranker. I'm not interested in ranking. There are companies doing that, but I look at the trends. And when we look at the trends, all selected 15 countries are going upwards in terms of their publications. They contribute more to the internationally visible research, right? And we can see the increase easier in those more publishing ones, but the others are also going up within their own pace. I think this is a good sign overall. Another thing, for example, you may say, okay, Turkey has 80 million population. It is okay that they may publish more than Qatar, right? Qatar has around maybe 1 million, around there. So this is a research intensity metric. So how do we calculate this? Basically, the publications per population. And when you look at that, again, I'm not interested in who is first or second, but I am more interested in the trend, and all of them are going up in this trend as well. And let's check the overall trend as well. You see, I added world here. World, sorry about the colors, they're a bit confusing maybe, but this yellow line, can you see? It's almost straight. So the world is increasing this way. It's pretty much, I mean, stably increasing. But all these countries having maybe big jumps from in the last decade, especially. And these are also increasing, but not very much visible because their starting point is very low, basically. So in terms of research intensity as well, there is an increase. And then continuing on major trends, here is an interesting data about international versus domestically collaborated publications. So these data is very useful about showing maybe the nature of these research systems and maybe the health of their science system, let's say. For example, that same grouping is still happening. Turkey and Iran here, that following 4 countries: Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, Pakistan, and the other smaller systems or emerging systems in the data. We will have a closer look at them as well, but I think in the beginning, 15 countries is giving us a broad picture. So what does this table say? Here, the dotted yellow line is the world average, okay? But here, X zone arrow is international collaborations, and domestic collaborations is the vertical line. So what we see here is that Iran and Turkey are publishing high internationally and domestically. I think domestically collaborated, let's say. These are articles that have co-authorships only within domestics. If that's too high, it's here. And papers that have a Saudi Arabia-based scholar, let's say the yellow one, plus an international scholar. So here you see Saudi Arabia is actually publishing a lot of its papers internationally, and domestically not much is going on, which is interesting. So we have to, for example, think about that. Not same, but basically most others, in terms of domestic collaborations, except Iran and Turkey, they're not doing much, right? It's below. But internationally, some countries are exceptionally high in terms of international collaborations. But this is, of course, raw numbers. Raw number, what does it mean? Population may affect this. I mean, lower populations, such as UAE, may look small in this metric, even though they have percentagely, much more of their publications are international collaborations, right? So I was curious about that, and then I created this. Where is that? This table as well. I'll come to the previous one again. So you see, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, those small but well-funded Gulf research systems, they have very high percentage of international collaborations. And here is the world average. For international, 27%. For example, UAE, 83%. So these are showing us maybe some of the policy decisions. Maybe there are a lot of incentives. And I think there is a lot of, let me check my time. Okay. This also shows us in the literature that we see there are double affiliations that these well-funded small countries are funding. For example, they find a productive scholar outside of their country, and then they say, oh, why don't you have an affiliation with us as well? And then if they publish with their fellow department members in, let's say, Saudi Arabia, that's an internationally collaborated publication. And then you have this very exceptionally high numbers in the end. By comparison, again, the Iran and Turkey has closer to world average. And similar trend can be observed in domestic collaborations. In the literature, domestic collaborations are associated with having an established research system. Like, think of it logically. You are interested in some topic, right? And there is more likelihood that you will find someone like-minded with you in a bigger system, in a more established system, when there are more researchers, right? So then, for example, Iran and Turkey having a more established research system, they have higher percentage of domestic collaborations. And then same, smaller systems or emerging ones. Bangladesh, for example, has a high population, but their research system is emerging and it's not as big as the other ones, right? The established ones. So when you check, their domestic collaborations are on the low side. So this is actually a metric that shows us how established maybe and the size of the research system, basically. But it's not a direct variable, it's a proxy variable to show that. So this is a trend in domestic collaboration, which I think corroborates what we just said. It's just increasing for Turkey and Iran. It's as they have more researchers, they collaborate more, they work together. And the others are increasing as well, but at a much smaller pace in this metric. So we can come back to this if you have any questions, but for the sake of time, I need to go. So scientific influence, this is important. We just looked at the numbers till now. So what are the ways to look at this? There are multiple ways, and I cannot just go with one of them, but let's start with the quartiles, right? In some systems around the world, this is almost like how can I say, obsessed, right? You have to publish in Q1. So anyway, when we look at this, we see automatically those smaller systems with well-funded, they are higher in percentage. Qatar's publications, Q1 is actually almost half of them are Q1. which is again exceptionally not, almost not normal. Basically, this by definition, Q1 should be 25%, Q2 should be 25% again, right? Etc., etc. But here is the world average available in Web of Science. This is collected from Web of Science. And I think Web of Science data itself is biased in the sense that they may be picking only the journals that are higher up in these rankings. So in Web of Science, 42% is Q1. So maybe that's why some nations are also emphasizing publishing Web of Science, that's better, etc., because they themselves tend to choose higher quartile journals. Anyway, we see here at the bottom, my country, Turkey, the lowest level of Q1 percentile. So you see, when you have high volume of publications, maybe those with low impact values are dragging the average down. But when you have a smaller system, which, most of them are higher quartile, then the average value you have is better, I think. That's the way I make sense of it. But we cannot just stay with quartiles. For example, category normalized citation impact. This is a normalized value by Web of Science, and it's very useful. It's normalized by the year of publications, by the area, etc. Again, we see a similar trend. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Lebanon being a small system. I think these small systems, maybe only the good ones make it to these, let's say, internationally visible areas, right? And they drive their impact metrics up, the average values. But the Turkey, this is interesting. Tunisia, for example, goes against my theory. But again, it's overall less than 1. Oh, I have to explain. For this variable, C and CI, it's the shortened form, category normalized citation impact. 1 means world average. It's by definition, by calculation that way. So if you're above 1, that means you have higher than world average impact. If you're below 1, you are lower than world average. So half is higher, actually, almost, and half is lower. And lower ones aren't, they're below the ground, etc., but below the world average. And Qatar, with its smaller output, those seem to be affecting, but this may be related to their international publications as well. Well, let me continue. Trend is also important for us, rather than the snapshot values I just shared. Here, for example, it's a bit confusing, yes, but let me just quickly, this is world average, which stays at 1, as you can see. It has to, that's the definition. So almost, actually, all of them are going up. I think that's an important thing to check and see. And since this is a normalized variable, it's not about, population increasing or etc. It is, there may be some policy decision that's moving them up. And also maybe these countries are also investing more in their science systems. These are promising metrics. So research area-based metrics are another important thing. We have to check, what research areas they're doing well and what they are not, right? So I use OECD's 6 research areas here. Natural sciences, engineering and technology is the second one. Third one, medical and health sciences, agricultural sciences, social sciences, and humanities. I'm sure you're all aware of these. So when you look at these, almost all of them have natural sciences and engineering the highest, right? The one on the left, if you see the colors. So this is not against the global trends. Most developing countries, and even the established ones, have natural science and engineering heavy systems. But maybe the proportions are different here. Within these 2 systems, Lebanon and Turkey, they publish a lot on medical and health sciences, which is interesting. The others don't have that much, I mean, comparatively. And the rest follows. And what is interesting to me here is social sciences and humanities, they look very low here. I mean, I checked the global average for this. Almost all of them, I think all of them, are below global average in terms of their social sciences and humanities contributions. So this is an interesting topic that I would like to follow up. Maybe we will come back to this. There are different reasons could be behind this. Maybe, there are many, but they're not making it to international databases, right? That could be a reason. We have to keep that in mind. But some other developing systems also have that language system, but they are making it to international databases. So let's keep that in mind. And then CNCI values, you remember those significance, let's say, citation-related, impact-related variables. So here, relatively smaller and well-funded systems are doing better overall than larger systems. That seems to be a trend. Turkey and Morocco are the only two systems with no research area having a higher than world average CNCI value. So you see Turkey here, all are below 1, and Morocco as well, all are below 1. But for example, very influential systems here. Some I have to acknowledge, a few highly cited papers seem to be inflating the CNCI values of small sets of publications, such as humanities publications of Saudi Arabia. You see, it's actually exceptionally high. But the CNCI values for these areas of these systems are exceptionally high, although their research outputs in the same areas are on the smaller side. This inflation of CNCI issue is known. It's not, not something I can do about it. It is explained in the Clarivet, Insights Indicators Handbook. So we have to know the nature of this data and acknowledge its limitations, but then go forward with the ones that we can corroborate, can triangulate, etc. So I hope I was able to give you some snapshot, the major trends going on in these countries. Let me just briefly talk about some geopolitical shifts as well. Basically, global science is set to experience different times in the 2020s and forward, I think. China surpasses the USA in terms of the number of scientific papers in 2020 in most scientific databases. This scenario is expected to have implications not only in East Asia, but also beyond the region. So here I started with, remember those 6 countries that I highlighted, 2 outliers, then plus 4 others, right? So I put them here and continued with this exploration. So this index value, co-authorship index provided by National Science Bureau of United States. This index says that if the index value for collaboration, bilateral collaboration is 1, that means that is the expected level of collaboration based on population, based on their investment and all further and so. So here I saw that these countries are already collaborating more than expected between each other. Very high. I mean, for example, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, 5 times more than world average. They're expected. Saudi Arabia and Egypt, 11 times. And some of them, Turkey is 3 times. So here, don't get me wrong, 1996 variable data is also here. That some of them for is low or non-existent. But when you look at the most recent one, 2020, they are going high. Only a few exceptions, Iran and Egypt and Iran and Saudi Arabia. That seems to be for political reasons, but Iran with all others, again, all higher than expected. So with this in mind, I now know, these seem to be collaborating well with each other. And some people may say, oh, that's because of the language they share. Well, they don't share language. Only 2 of them share a language, right? Arabic is not their language. My argument for that in the paper is that these share some cultural proximity, right? Maybe depending on religious background. And this is leading them to collaborate more with each other. So then I moved on and wanted to check how these countries are collaborating with the highest publishing systems in the world, right? So collaboration is also a show of scientific influence, 2 sides influencing each other, not just one-sided. So I think this is an important metric. So I checked with the USA. Okay, they are increasingly collaborating with the USA as well. USA isn't going anywhere, still there. But when you check with China, the data is actually about what to say. We all learned this exponential increase term from COVID times, right? So increase with collaborations with China of all these selected high publishing Muslim majority systems is exponential. And when we look at the latest year, 2021, the volume is now higher with China than the USA. That's one thing. Another thing, then I was curious about nation to nation. Here, I think the country that has the highest investment with collaborations with China is Pakistan. And it actually reflects in our overall knowledge as well, right? Pakistan and China are doing a lot of things together. China is investing Pakistan's research system a lot. This goes well with geopolitics as well. Turkey, as expected, more with the US. because it's a NATO country just next to Europe, kind of not so far away, right? But when you look at this, three of them collaborate more with China, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Malaysia, and other three collaborates more with US. So it's there is some split here, as you can see. I can go into more details if you want to discuss later. For example, Saudi Arabia, I delved into deeper. There's a lot of energy-related collaboration between China and Saudi Arabia, and they have become strategic partners a few years ago. These are very important developments, and it's showing its influence in science as well. Only Iran is the exception here, which is interesting. It seems like their geopolitical position and their government may be favoring more towards collaboration with China, but the individual researchers, I always emphasize that a lot, their agency, it's making a difference. They may be preferring to work with US researchers still. And I have some maybe data for that later. This is the same index from National Science Bureau for these countries. Let me not go through all of them, but basically I checked China-US collaborations as well. Actually, that collaboration itself has been higher than expected, 1.11. But this is 2020, and maybe we were witnessing an ongoing discoupling between two science systems. So we need to check 2024 data for that. And Pakistan's collaboration with China, again, 1.49. This is very high, more than expected, according to National Science Bureau. Discipline-based collaborative paper, this is, always we need to check discipline-based because there are more information and how can I say, details going on. We cannot just check the main volume. So when we check this, let's go by area to area and total numbers because the others will be taking a lot of time. But natural sciences, as expected, everyone, there's this argument in the literature that China has STEM-heavy research, right? Which is true here as well. Much higher with China when it comes to natural sciences overall, these countries' total number than USA. Same with engineering, that STEM-heavy research is showing here. But then when it comes to medical and health sciences, then we see the difference. USA is still very strong in medical and health sciences, and all these countries also keep on collaborating with the US in that. Maybe because China is publishing less on it. That can be, how can I say, pursued further. And agricultural sciences, no huge difference, but China is higher. This is interesting to me. Social sciences, I mean, for example, you remember that argument in the literature, China being STEM heavy, right? But with social sciences as well, there's no huge difference between US and China. And China has a little more. This could be, to some extent related to the bias in the international databases we have, but still, I think needs further exploration. So the difference that we expected in natural sciences doesn't come up in social sciences. Humanities, I would say this is as expected. If you look at this number, they collaborate more with USA than China, but humanities is a very culture affected research area, right? The volume is much lower when you compare to natural sciences. One is 128, the other is like close to 10,000. This is a thing with social sciences and humanities. The numbers are low and rankers don't seem to like us. But anyways, that's a different topic. So who bears responsibility? I think this is important. The initiative in collaborations. So how to understand this? Can you see this fully, by the way? Is the slides moving for you? I guess no one can.
Yes.
Okay, good. So here, let's not go back to the old data, but the newer ones, 2021. I mean, what we mean, this is a proxy variable, of course. We cannot just know who is taking more initiatives. But you may agree with me, and literature agrees, that first authors or corresponding authors in collaborative publications, they tend to do more. I mean, they tend to lead, etc. So here we have percentage of first authors and percentage of corresponding authors for each, those who collaborate more with US, those who collaborate with China, let's say. I mean, here we cannot go over all of them, but maybe highlight a few, like Iran. Do you remember Iran? I highlighted earlier that they interestingly publish more with US than China, but contrary to their overall geopolitical stance, right? The countries. And I highlighted individual people's agency. It is, I think, showing up here. You see, in every collaboration that we can see with Iran and US, actually almost 70% of them Iran first authored. So maybe Iranian scholars reach up, to them and start a collaboration with them, etc. So corresponding authorship also is similar to first authorship data. But when you look at this with others, I mean, the number again may be high, but it's not as high. For example, Turkey, I think with USA, it's still quite high. But with China, Turkey isn't leading them much. Of course, this is pretty much okay. I mean, there are multiple author papers, people can be second authors, it's all good. But if there's something like 70%, that tells us something about data. Okay, lastly, citation recognition. I know my time is running out. I mean, I checked, okay, these countries are increasingly collaborating with China, but what about, I mean, does it pay off in terms of citation premium, right? That is very important for researchers, for some at least. So in the literature, it is well known that international collaborations are usually more cited than just domestic ones or just single authored ones. That's on average. So I provide here, for example, the average national values. For example, USA being 1.32, that's higher than global. One is the global average, right? China is also a little higher than global, but the rest actually, except Saudi Arabia, are either close to world average or below it. But when they collaborate, it's always above world average, right? So the blue one is USA, as you can see in this radar diagram. So yes, much higher than what they would normally publish in their, domestic publication or single authored. But when you check China collaborations, it's in every case, every country higher, which is interesting. For some, it's a little higher, like Pakistan, 1.65 USA and 1.71 with China, right? Still higher. But for some, like Turkey, they collaborate less with China, but when they do, their citation premium is pretty much higher. So it seems collaborating with China seems to be giving them some, at least in terms of citation edge as well. This can be related to, Chinese collaborations more with STEM. The others are more with, I don't know, other areas. But still, medical science is US, where US is strong, right? And that is also quite high impact, to be honest. This is also another finding. So let's wrap up. I know my time is up now. In terms of summary, the selected Muslim majority systems contributions to global research are still modest. That's my conclusion, because they only published 5.15% of all Web of Science papers globally in the last 3 decades, although their combined population represents 14.16% of the world population. So, you would expect, the population should follow, right? Their contributions should be close to their population at least. That's the share they cover in the world. So in that sense, it's still modest. But as you remember, the earlier figures, they all showed increasing trend, right? So that increasing trend in the quantity and scientific influence of publications is promising. That's what I would say. And 6 science systems in alphabetical order, Egypt, Iran, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey, consistently differentiated themselves from others in research area-based publication analyses and overall trends. And my observation as someone who continues to research on this is that Indonesia is likely to join them soon. There are other global changes as well, as the latest figures showed. So several metrics indicate that international collaborations are shifting globally, with the highlighted 6 research systems increasingly collaborating with China. Half of the selected ones are collaborating more with China, and the other half is more with USA. So this is indicating a 50-50 split. This was the argument in the higher education paper later on. Yes, what future agenda holds ahead of us? The plan now is to go beyond bibliometrics while still using them. Bibliometrics is a very useful tool, but we cannot only rely on them. We need to go deeper. That's the thinking. But it was a good starting point, I think, to research them. It gave us good big picture. There is a new early career grant application I just submitted. I mean, a few months ago. This will be on the humanities and social sciences research in the Islamic scholastic system. As I highlighted, they contribute less than global percentage, global averages. Why? This needs more focusing. Maybe we need some decolonization about this, right? So I will try to focus on epistemologies of Islamic scholarship in the HSS area. I have collaborators from Hong Kong and also from outside Hong Kong, different parts. So hopefully, let's see, this is a very competitive grant, may or may not work out. But even if it doesn't work out, there will be other grants that I can apply and other ways. And then there's a planned collaboration with Oxford Center for Islamic Studies. This is a very good research center based in University of Oxford. This is a very new development. There's a new fellowship coming up. Hopefully, if there's no other, the offer is there. But so yeah, I will start that in next year. And then I think there's much to do in this. I mean, energy and supportive environment will be important. I hope I can do more and happy to, discuss these findings and get your ideas, comments as well. Sorry if I went a little over time. Here is my, contact information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. We had these valuable insights about trends and agendas in Muslim majority systems, and I believe many of us will walk away with a deeper understanding of higher education research and development in these systems. We'll have a little bit of time, and I saw a couple of questions arriving now in the chat, but also I can see some hands going up. So let me start with the chat and give take turns. We start with my colleague Bruce McFarlane, who's co-director of the Center for Higher Education Leadership and Policy Studies at EDU. So I'll give him privilege of asking the first questions. First question, I don't know if he's available, but I'll probably read that myself. So Bruce, would you like to ask the question yourself?
Sure. Okay, I'll just read it out. Hi, thank you, Yusuf. Yes, I just posted the question, Yusuf, so you may not have seen it. Basically, my question is sort of my other role as a dean of a faculty. So the universities in Hong Kong, not just my one, want to recruit more international students, and they're looking to places like Central Asia and places like Indonesia, Malaysia, where you've obviously they're Muslim majority systems. But my question to you is really, how ready are Hong Kong universities to actually recruit more Muslim students in terms of what they're providing as an environment? I'm not sure whether that's something you can tackle, but that's my question. Thank you.
Should I go ahead, Anatoly?
Yes, please. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That's a very good question. And I think I can share some insights, maybe. One is, making the campuses more inclusive is, I think, important. That is something that I have been struggling. Well, struggling is a strong word. I have been happy here mostly, but for example, finding a halal food is an issue for me in my campus. They're doing their best. But anything like that, Indonesian people, they would be looking for that. I mean, inclusivity. So knowing their culture and working towards that is usually good. In Hong Kong, we have, Western cafes, always Western cafe, which is good. That's one inclusivity. But that doesn't necessarily help with those from, let's say, Southeast Asia, right? Malaysian, Indonesians. So maybe, letting another small canteen to open up. My university now, they are ordering from outside for Muslim students in the campus because it's increasing. But it's kind of awkward because we, for example, order now to eat tomorrow, and then the inclusivity team will deliver to us. If that was included in the normal canteen or cafeteria, that would be amazing. Of course, food is not everything. It's just one example. I think that showing that we're open and we will be able to accommodate your needs is important. Another thing, building more ties and with those countries. And I'm not just talking about signing memorandum of understanding and no meeting afterwards. I think more connections can help. So, for example, I mean,
No.
traveling to these ASEAN countries, if Indonesia and Malaysia is, for example, the target. So, you know, academics building ties with them, I think will be important. We can discuss more about this later as well, but if you want to have any specific ways I want to go deeper, you can let me know. And
Many thanks.
okay, thank you for your question.
Thank you. I saw Jerry Postleton was number one with the hand going up, but he's busy now. I'll give a chance to my colleague Sarfaros Nias of Sarfaros.
Thank you, Anatoly. Good to see everybody. Good to see you, Anatoly. Thanks for organizing this wonderful thing. Yusuf, this is very important presentation, particularly related to my work, especially in research and knowledge production in Central Asia and South Asia. So my question to you is, this is all good, but as you said, we need to go deep into some of the critical questions about why is it so? And that's why I was expecting that you would speak about some of the challenges, even though your study is a quantitative one, but still, for example, the challenge of academic dependency, the challenge of English language, the challenge of geopolitics, the bunch of challenges that are going to keep Muslim majority countries in the subdued situation and dependent, particularly in academia. Am I right? Thank you.
You are very right. I mean, dependency and language issues are very important. And I think that is what will come in, for example, when I research humanities and social sciences, because one of the arguments that I think why these countries are, for example, less in terms of percentage on humanities and social sciences is maybe those research are more culturally influenced, culturally dependent, and then they will automatically become less visible in the global science. But when you look at STEM areas like engineering, it's more like method, right? Even language is less prominent there because formulas, you know, those, you know, it's more quantitative. So that is a very important thing, and it needs to be tackled. And I mean, there will be, I think, in terms of policy recommendation, if you think maybe one way to look at this is maybe confidence in one's own, I guess, epistemologies, in one's own ontological stance. That's important. Otherwise, dependency, you know, no one can go ahead of this. This is a very important topic in Chinese humanities and social sciences literature as well, because dependency is happening, let's say, non-West areas, right? My thinking on this is some more increased confidence in one's own contributions to global science. Like, for example, the ones here, although we're seeing emerging systems, they are going up, but how to tackle dependency is what comes next, I think. It's just the establishing the system first, but then building on your own, I think, epistemological traditions and intellectual traditions, while still not disintegrating yourself from the world, science and research. But a lot more needs to be done on this. I mean, I acknowledge this answer could go much deeper, and happy to maybe stay in touch with you if you're working on these topics. I will check your papers as well. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much, Sarfaros. I have a question from a chat. Miguel Antonio Lim is asking a question about your mentioning of cultural explanations for scientific collaborations between Muslim majority countries. So what exactly are those elements of the cultural explanation that you were thinking about?
Oh, so cultural explanations, like, I guess, with you mean within these countries? Is that what is meant? Should
Yeah,
I?
just I guess in one of the slides you just
Okay.
mentioned the cultural explanation as a general term, but Miguel is probably asking about the kind of specifics of what you mean by the cultural explanation.
Good. So for that one, actually, I got this question from the reviewers as well before that one of the papers that was published. They said, "Oh, you know, this must be language. They share language." So as I said, language is helping for only two of them, Egypt and Saudi Arabia. They have Arabic, right, among those six. I think for others, we have to think about other things. Another argument in the literature is geographical proximity. So if these countries are all bundled together neighbors, then, naturally you develop more relationships, more scholars, same time zone, like we can collaborate more with Japan or more with, Australia, while, other parts have harder time because time zone, right? That also doesn't work here. It works for some of them, but not all of them, because Malaysia is just the other side of the world, right? And then, there's Turkey. The rest are closer, but then you have the closer ones are not doing as much as, for example, Turkey and Malaysia. So my argument, the only one that seems to be holding for all is cultural proximity, and that seems to me is that, they all, what is common in them in terms of culturally. When you check, the first thing that comes to mind is the religious background. They're Muslim. Maybe when you go to their university, and if you're a religious pious person, it's easy to find a mosque just next to you. I don't know. Or you go them, you don't worry about food much. In Malaysia, you can find halal food more. But I have to acknowledge, I mean, religion is not everything. Cultures are diverse. Still, for example, Malaysia is still very much different from Saudi Arabia in terms of certain ways, right? But still, I mean, even within that diversity, they seem to find similarity, and they seem to collaborate more so than others, as the US, the metrics, science boards metrics indicate higher than expected collaborations for them. I hope this was enough. And if you have more, it's always, happy to learn from Miguel. He always has these interesting ideas. Happy to listen to if you have anything to add to this.
Yeah, thank you. I think our colleague Hugo Horta has been doing something on homophily in research collaborations, and I think that also can be one of the factors there, right? Just in terms of how researchers decide on who they want to collaborate with.
Homophily is usually, not always, but I think in his one, was it the gender? In Marek Kuyek's studies, homophily was gender related.
Yeah.
And maybe in Hugo's, he published a very recent paper, like a few weeks ago. As far as I remember, it was, the geographical proximity was there, and gender was there, as far as I remember. So they are there, but okay. Gender, I didn't check that here.
Yeah.
That's very different data. You need a very different data set for that. This is more about a bit nations and research systems.
And the religion itself, I mean, just kind of very few people actually investigate that. And Ulvia Mikhailova is actually asking that particular question. Why is it, why to divide research world into Muslim majority and non-Muslim majority countries, and whether this would lead then to further divides about Christian majority countries, Jewish majority countries, etc. So that's kind of, this kind of conceptual question about do we need to look more into these homogenies and homophilies and so on?
No, that's a very good question. Thank you for asking. I think it needs to be discussed and highlighted. I mean, I don't divide the world into Muslim majority and non-Muslim majority. I think that's something that needs to be said first. I only, as a, focus, I said, okay, let me focus on this, because they had shared those commonalities, and there's these problems, as I highlighted early on in the paper. But this is not to divide the world. And in these papers, I always highlight, this is not to see them separately in the global science, but see them as part of global science and how their contributions to global knowledge production. That is very important. And just, this is like let's say if you have a regional focus, right? You want to focus on these systems, something like that. That's what I'm doing. And I think they are focused less. That's my observation. So why not focus on them? That's my question.
We're approaching the end of this webinar, and I probably used the last opportunity for the question which was asked by Wahid. You can see probably in the chat where he's asking about these factors. You have answered so many questions about different factors, but in the end, he says whether these countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Pakistan are dependent on these faculty members from outside, or whether they push their faculty members to publish with international researchers. To what I mean, I guess in your presentation you have try to cover a lot of these important factors that come together. So I don't know if you want to make kind of the concluding comment on all this, given this extensive data that you already shared with us during the webinar.
Okay, let's maybe shortly try to cover. So one thing that maybe needs to highlight it is these data is followable as much as, all the, rankings that we see around, all the metrics that, shape our policy perspective, right? Everything. So these are actually, these data together make up those rankings. And of course, rankings have other things. Because they are so influential, some countries tend to play with these data. So those who have really high international percentages may be likely of them maybe paying double affiliations of people for living in different country, but they come to the country for maybe a month or 2 months per year. But I have to acknowledge such games are not just happening in these countries, and certainly not in all 15. I think that may be happening small and well-funded systems, especially those in the Gulf. But for example, we see similar practices in France, similar practices in Europe. It is there everywhere, unfortunately, because everyone wants to go up in the rankings. But maybe we see them more in terms of percentage in these small, well-funded countries because one, they want to go up quickly. They want to establish a good research system. Two, they have the means to do so. They have a lot of funding that they can spare for that. So maybe they are more visible in those small, well-funded Gulf countries. But overall, I think the overall trend going up could be a good, promising situation and needs further exploration. So maybe that's how I close. We need to do more.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yusuf. This was a wonderful opportunity to learn about the Muslim majority systems. We have, I believe, many valuable takeaways for thinking about how we can build international partnerships with Muslim majority systems and invite more faculty members and students to visit us here in Hong Kong or East Asia. So I believe this webinar will be a great contribution to that particular thinking about our common futures, about peaceful futures. So
yes, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me as well. It's an honor.
Thank you very much. Good night, everyone, and stay connected with the Center for Higher Education Leadership Studies and Policy Studies at the Education University of Hong Kong. We'll be back with more webinars in the future. Thank you.